I'm really glad to be here. Y'all are the grandest. Not from Louisiana, we're the small state. You know, I love just driving down the highway and see the rock. I mean, it's really, you do a lot of rain. So I'm going to take from that you are a stalwart. You know what you think and what you believe, and you can get behind it and commit to it like brand, right? Right. So there's one aspect of life in the future that I want to be able to talk to you about tonight. I'm going to tell you just my own story. Believe me, I didn't start out as a Catholic nun with Sister St. Joseph and you all thinking I was never going to be a death penalty nun. Whoever wants to go be a nun say, hey, you want to be a death penalty nun? You get to go with people and they execute you. It's really a great ministry. You want to do it. But it unfolded, and I call it grace. Because there's a lot of ways we talk about how God's grace works in us. And the way I want to talk about grace is that God wakes us up, calls us to do something. Maybe it's to be a surprise we didn't know we were doing. And when we started out as kids, what were we done? Just kids, right? We just started unfolding. And God calls us. So I want to tell you my story. And I'm going to take you with me through my story. And then at the end, I got an invitation for you to act, to become one of the citizens of New Hampshire. That it's not just a passive participant of watching history we made, but to be a participant in your own history, which is what God calls us to do, because God's present in history. And we read the Bible, we read about Moses, and we read about prophets, and we read about heroes in American history. They were all people just like us who got involved in the events of their time and came to understand that some things were the right way to go and other things were really the wrong way to go. And then when we become aware that we got to work to change it. To put it in Catholic theology terms, in the 4th century, St. Basil said, annunciations are free. You know, like the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary, an annunciation, Isaiah, who shall we send? And Isaiah says, send me. Annunciations are free, but incarnation is forever. And when we hear that invitation to be a person, to help Christ, to become incarnate in our society in a way that Christ has not been incarnate before. That's an invitation of grace. And what's going to be our role in doing it? So I started out Catholic, mom and dad were good Catholics. We were a good Catholic family in Louisiana. Grew up on the rosary, said the rosary every night. The kids were all, you know, come on, let's say the rosary, say the rosary. And so we go at night and we'd say the rosary. And it was a way to pray, and it was a way to remember the mysteries of the life of Christ and His Mother, the joyful times, the sorrowful times, where He lost His life, the glorious times, where God raised Him from the dead, and that didn't have the last word. And Jesus said that to each of us. And as we get older, we're going to go through dying of friends. We're going to go through dying. And Christ is sitting in our hearts like this spark, like this lightning in us. And God calls us to life. It's very interesting that there's no word in Aramaic, which was the language of Jesus, that He ever used where He said He was a Savior. All of His words, all of His sons were to be alive. Come that you may have life, to be fully alive. Not walking around half dead, but to be alive and to come alive. And when we have a really deep, vibrant spiritual life, what it does, it makes us alive. It's not fundamentally about, believe in this creator, it's about being alive and to have God's own Spirit in us. When we're young, we have God's Spirit in us as much as Pope Francis does. And calling us, quickening us to use all the gifts God's given us to help our society be transformed to a place where people are tortured and people are killed, And everybody has human rights and civil rights. We're called to. So what happened with me, went to Catholic school, loved the nuns, they were great teachers, wanted to be a teacher. From the time I was in 6th grade, and we had a teacher who was very bored. He was very bored. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be a teacher. This is not going to be boring. Learning how to be able to be fun. And then I joined the sisters right after I graduated from high school. And here's my image. So I put my foot on this little weight and started home. And then back to 2 happened at the Catholic Church. Summoning us all, saying, the church is the people of God. It's not fundamentally the hierarchy. A lot of times when people say, well, the church did this and the church did that, it needs a bishop. And the bishops have their role in the church, of course. I'm not the bishop. But Vatican II said, we are the ones called to live the gospel in the world, the people of the church. And we, as Sisters of St. Joseph in New Orleans and the different places where we were, really got a hold of that and invited us as nuns to go back to the Gospels, to go back to our founder in France in 1650, where we were one of the first communities of nuns to be founded, where the women weren't slapped up in the cloister and told, now just go pray for the world, because as women you got to be protected, we can't let you out on the streets. And we became what's called an apostolic community, going 2 by 2 in the streets, because France, where we were founded in Le Puy, was in really dire straits. They had the religious wars, there was the hunger disease, babies weren't fed well, people just lived with hunger. Girls weren't educated, only boys were educated. And these women got in here and started doing stuff. Well, that's the community I joined. And so the awakening of grace had to do with awakening to justice, being a person of justice, because I knew you were called to holiness. I knew you were called to be prayerful, spirit prayerful. I love teaching kids. I taught 7th and 8th grade girls and boys English, grammar, and religion. I made a joke because I say I work with death row inmates. Now I don't know what's wrong with the death row inmates. I mean, the 8th grade boys are trying to teach them grammar. It's close. But I love them. And I love teaching. And then the call came, and it came within the community, and it was debate on this. What are we called to as nuns? That the church was calling us to be on the side of poor people and make preferential option for the poor, and to work for justice. And I thought, well, we nuns, we're not social workers. You know, if we just don't run back down, if the poor people have God, they got everything. But of course, I didn't know to be real poor, because I grew up in such privilege. When we grow up in privilege, we don't know we grow up in privilege. We're like little goldfish, swimming around the bowl and all the other little goldfish. But I grew up during the days in the deep south of segregation of the races, and black people couldn't even sit in the church with the white people and say, "Go to church." And I never questioned it. That's what culture does. Culture is this little elastic, it's this little area. It just says, well, honey, in the deep south, it's better for the races to just stay separate. I didn't even know the last name of the African American woman who worked in my house. She worked with Mom in the house, and Jesse, her husband, worked in New York. I didn't even know their last names. They were our servants, and Mom and Daddy were kind, but it was charity. Not justice. Because when you have a mind and heart for justice, you begin to ask the question, why is it that some people are relegated that they can't even drink from one fountain with one people they drink from? Why is it that when they can ride on the buses and public transportation, they have to go to the back of the bus? Why is it? Is that what our Constitution calls for? Is this what equal justice means for people? But culture, I just didn't ever ask the question. I just accepted it. Mom and Daddy, good people, kind to Ellen and Jesse. And Daddy, was a successful lawyer. He had founded the radio station, the first TV station in Baton Rouge, and he helped Helen and Jesse buy property and actually get a house, and he helped Jesse get a good job at the refinery in Baton Rouge. Kind, good people. But justice, I never heard of. So when our sisters started getting into the debate, what do we call these nuns? And so we hit these two camps. The social justice nuns and the spiritual nuns. I was part of the spiritual nuns. Because I had joined the kind of become a nun because I want to be a mystic. I want to be close to God like Teresa Down. When she would levitate in the kitchen. When she's so close to God, when she prayed, her body left the floor. I thought, ooh, that would really be good to be that close to God. I want to be that close to God. But justice, I'm on the wrong side of the debate. And then our sister, this is the way God works with us. Patient. And then we all were summoned to go to this talk in Terre Haute, Indiana. And it was during the summer when the girls were all away, and we used the dorms to stay, and we had none coming and talk to us. A social justice nun. But 3 days we were going to be capped. And our St. Mary in the Woods, we in the woods, in the storm, and this nun, social justice nun, is going to be brainwashing us on being the people of justice. And I said, look, we are nuns, we are not social workers, don't get me on that social justice stuff. So the first day, Sister Maria Augustine Neal, and this is the first part of the journey that's told in Devon, when she talked to us. I came in that first day scot-free, because she talked about the rich countries of the world, the poor countries of the world, the kids are starving, they don't have health care. Rich countries of the world consume more affordable resources of the world. I knew the world wasn't fair. The statistics didn't get it. And she said the next day, she was going to talk about Jesus. I slept really good that morning. I got to breathe on Jesus. I've been meditating on Jesus my whole life. I gave retreats. I studied scripture. Bring on Jesus. And so she did. And you're going to see it in that book. Read that memoir. I'll give you the line, she said, that changed the spiritual trajectory of my life. It was the way she talked about Jesus. And it came home to me what faith meant. And she said, this was the line. Jesus preached good news to the poor. And I thought maybe what was coming next. Yeah, good news to the poor. And God is on high. Father loves everyone so much. Every year, every head is coming. That's how much God loves us. Not a sparrow falls to the ground. And that's true. That's the foundation of all good news. Is that we're not here by accident. We've been created out of love, we're made for love, and at the end of our lives, we will surrender our lives. But what she said, integral to the good news that Jesus preached to poor people was that it was not God's will for them to be poor, and that they had a right to stand up to ask for what was rightfully theirs. What? I thought to myself, she's talking about that revolutionary stuff. It's like the communist stuff. What do you mean that we're not supposed to be poor? And then suddenly it just was all there. I've been building toward this. That was even part of my resistance to it because it meant changing the way I did everything. And is it God's will that some people are just meant to be poor? So that you should be born in you and you're going to die of malnutrition by the time you're 9. That's God's will. Why is there poverty? Why is there malnutrition? Why do we have people without health care? It's a result of our policies, our decisions. We're the ones who design the policy. It's up to us then to change. Nobody, that's not God's will for people. That's an indignity to live in poverty. And you have to watch children die because they can't get health care. That Jesus was always on the side of the people of margins, like Pope Francis is teaching us. We have a Pope drop plumb out of the sky and said, hey, you need to get out of the buildings. We don't just want to be administrators and programs. Get to the margins. Look at the homeless people. Look at the people in prison. Look at the people who are dying because they don't have health care. Get out to the margins, to the people that don't have a voice and don't want to listen to them. Pope Francis now has showers built in the back. So people can come take a shower. Not everybody's real happy about this Pope. But we haven't got all these snow people coming to the back, and got the tourists coming into the back. And what do you think it does? For the tourists to be coming in the back, and you got smelly homeless people there, and see them feed them on his birthday. It's going to attract them like flies. We're going to have all these people coming in to the back. And Pope Francis chooses to live in a simple house and not a palace. It was God, the Pope, who comes out to the balcony, and the little white smoke, they went up and up. People happy, all the people gathered and said, he comes, oh, Viva Papa, Viva Papa. He comes out to the balcony, and normally what the Pope did was begin to bless the people of the world. And here was the Pope bowed his head and asked the people to bless him. And he never leaves anyone without saying, pray for him. His story is very interesting. His story of conversion to the gospel is very interesting. And you can find it out for yourself. So I hear this nun read us to me say that Jesus entered to the good news was that Jesus founded a community where no one was ever in need. And I realized how separated I've been. I live in New Orleans, in the suburbs, and we had 50% of the people in New Orleans that lived below the poverty line, and I've never met any. I was like a little girl that wrote this essay one time called The Poor Family. Once it was a very poor family. The mother was poor, the father was poor. The children were poor, the whole family was poor. The chauffeur was poor, the gardener was poor. It was a poor family. And I couldn't get it. Because right, just less than the 16th of the line, all I had to do was get in the car. And we had 10 major housing projects in New Orleans where African American people live. And this is why I call this grace. We know when grace calls us because we may do something that's hard, but the feeling in us is that we've never been so alive in our lives. We're alive. And so I made a decision that I would move in with African American people in the inner city of New Orleans. Not as a great white woman coming to save the poor black people, but as someone who would sit at their feet and let them be my teachers. And it was like going to another country. Because all the rules were different. The rules were different with the police. I wasn't scared of the police. I mean, if my car broke down, or I'm driving on the highway at 2 o'clock in the morning, stay through, pull up behind me and say, oh, thank God, I got help. Every young man, African American young man in that neighborhood had real struggles with the police. And don't get me wrong, man. This is not to say policemen are all racist and mean, and they like to meet black people and they kill black people. We got to be sharp in our thinking, not divide things into these sharp blacks and whites like this. That's absolute mistake. We just go, yeah, just starts knocking the policeman. One day, my uncle was the policeman. They risked their lives for us. And indeed they did. And that's the other side. Before we need a racist environment like the Deep South, where to be black was always to be under suspicion. And to this day, I think, when I would walk down the street, sure, when I went to St. Thomas, if an African-American man was coming toward me, instinctively lowered his eyes. Black men well knew that white women can do you in. They accuse you of something. And I always would say, good morning. And they'd be surprised. So patterns get established, color-coded, afraid. These people do the crimes. These people we see on the cartoons and New Orleans on TV. Oh, yeah, they put the handcuffs on. That's just people doing all these crimes over there in the St. Thomas Project. And I moved in with other sisters. Here was an awakening. There were already there people before me. I wasn't the first one to discover that justice was a part of the gospel of Jesus. There was Sister Laura Shannon that started Hope. There was Sister Kathleen Bell. There was Sister Barbara Brooke. There were these sisters. They already were there. They were awake ahead of me. And you know what? It doesn't matter when we wake up. It's what we do after we wake up that's really important. Whether you're very young and you awaken to the gospel that is calling you into justice, or the older, it doesn't matter. Grace comes, we awaken, we begin to act. And we got the power in us to act. And so there I was, and it's while I was there, working at a place called House. One day, and I want to introduce at this point, Sneaky Jesus. This is Sneaky Jesus Part 1. I'm coming out of Old House. Here's a guy coming along St. Andrew Street. He had a little clipboard, had a little project. Everybody meets that day. He said, hey, you want to be published project? And he meets me and says, hey, Sister Helen, you want to be a pen pal with somebody on the other? I said, sure. It's an English major. I can write some nice stuff. I never dreamed they were going to execute this person. It was an early age. We hadn't had an execution in Louisiana for over 20 years. It had an unofficial moratorium in the whole United States. No one was executed, even in the deep South states, where we do most of the executions today. Y'all got it on the books. But you haven't executed anybody in Hampshire since 1939. What are y'all doing with the death penalty still on the books? Are you kidding me? I mean, why is that still on there? They just had a little 12 they decided to keep it. Now, what's going on there with the politicians? Keep it what? For what? And you start looking into it, and you just say, what's behind this? What does it mean? You say we're pro-life? Oh, we can kill some people because they deserve it. Innocent life, that's one thing. That guilty life, that's something else. You draw a right line in the sand. Those guilty people don't get what they deserve. Just think for a minute. We barely know how to get the taxes done and even fill our potholes. How are we going to take on ourselves to decide that there are certain people so bad and incapable of being that we have to kill them? We have to kill them in our society because they're not fit to live among us. How do we get the wisdom to do that and choose the right ones? And of course, now that we've been at this a while, there are over 156 people who've had to be let out because college students on the Innocence Project saved their lives, say, make a mistake, make a mistake, make a mistake. You're supposed to have the best court system in the world. This thing is so broken, as we come to know. But, so it's just, you know, I'm writing somebody on there, yeah, sure, I can do that. I never dreamed that 2 years from the time I wrote that first letter, this man is going to be killed in the electric chair, and I, as his spiritual advisor, am going to watch him and be there for him when he dies. And I'm going to get involved with it. That's why I'm at a wave, and you don't float on the wave, you know, and sometimes we like floating real peaceful, like in a little lagoon, and I'm a little walking along, you know, we know where we are, I've got our friends, and all of a sudden this current starts kicking off. That's what happened. Because this is going to be a journey. By writing a letter, he writes back, I visit, I learn he has a brother who served 2 life sentences in the prison, and I learned that 2 innocent teenage kids had been killed at their hands. And at first, and it came to me a bit at a time, it was the visiting of him and seeing his humanness, knowing that he had done this terrible, terrible thing. Yet I looked in those eyes and then living out the metal grave during our first visit. I mean, he's a human being. He's a human being. And maybe that's what Christ wants us to know most of all, even about ourselves. And you're going to find out about the promise. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to go through because we have young people sitting here. But that each of us, everybody, is worth more than the worst thing we've ever done in our lives. Because God has made us that. We can never be nailed and say, that's the essence, that's who you really are. You did that. And if we have a big screen up here tonight and just show to reveal the secret part of each of us and the worst thing we ever did, and then be told, that's really who you are, that's who you are in your essence. And you want to say, no, that's not who I am. I'm a grandma. I do my homework. I mean, we would just start fishing for the parts of ourselves that we know that. And that's the message of Jesus. That's the message of redemption for all of us. No matter what we have done, we are more than that. And so I made the man, Patrick Sonnian, then I made his brother, and then I went to the prison coalition office one day because I was going to wait till they trusted me enough to tell me what they did. But I didn't want to be naive. And so I went and I said, can I see some background information on the Sonnian case? They said, sure. And they pulled out all these file folders. And I was by myself. They left the office. So now I know Pat, I know his brother, I know they've been with us. And I opened up the folder on the top page and looked right into the faces of two beautiful young people like you. David Malone was 17 years old. His girlfriend, Loretta Wood, was 18 years old. Their parents had sent their prom photo to the little newspapers in a Cajun town, Cajun. Their prom photo of a happy night, the two of them dressed beautifully, happy, and then next to them was the big dark headline of the newspaper, Teenagers Found Murdered. And I read the story with the terrible tales of these two brothers, whom I'm now the spiritual advisor. And on November 9th, these kids had gone to a homecoming football game at Catholic, one of the little towns in Louisiana, and afterwards went to a local lovers lane where teenagers used to go to the park. It's near a sugarcane field. And the two brothers were rabbi. And they had 22 brothers. And they'd see the car parked, because 5 other teenage couples came forward when David and Loretta were killed and said, they did this to us. And they'd come to the car with a flashlight, and there they're all alone. And they'd say, hey, you're trespassing. We're the security people that, guard the land of the people who own this land. We don't have to bring it to the owners. You parents know where you are tonight? And the kids are scared, and they're alone in the backseat guns. And they said that then what it would lead to was, well, I'll tell you what, if the girl has sex with us, I won't report you to the owners. Which is aggravated rape because they had guns, and some of the young women had rape. They were scared to say anything. They went home, they were scared to talk about it. Maybe they thought these two men would come and kill their mom and dad, their sister and brother. They were scared, they didn't say anything. But this night, this November night, these two precious kids, David and Loretta, they have found lying face down in that abandoned sugarcane field that had been harvested. And they had both been shot execution style in the back. And just put it together. Immediately hearing this. You know what? And everything I said about what Jesus says in the church. And then the heart of it, and these two kids left in and out in that sugar cane. And now parents going to begin their sorrowful journey, which is going to last all of their lives. That they had gotten up on that Friday morning, last memory of him when she'd gotten a new blue velour shirt. He'd stand by the sink and rub the arm, saying, "Mama, this is going to keep you warm tonight." And his dad had ordered off from the sailor, but he couldn't keep him alive. When I see the crime, and then I know that I am the spiritual advisor to the two people who did the crime, my first instinct was, I got to go to the parents. These poor parents. And that's why your parents say, call us if you're late, just because of things like this. Because David was always in by 11 or 11:30 on a weekend. And boy, that time came and went, and within an hour, his mom and dad were both pacing in the kitchen and praying and plunging them into this grief forever. And I am right there in the middle. And I thought of the parents, and I thought, I ought to do something. And then I had that. Because I thought, they don't want to see me. I'm the latest person in the world who wants to see me. I'm the spiritual advisor to the two people who killed their kids in cold blood. So others would go to church. And they would hear the Christian gospel, and they would hear from the epistle of Paul, slaves, be obedient to your masters, and they would get the message. It's okay for you to have slaves, just be nice to your slaves, but that it's not God's law that people can be treated as property. They're human beings, but we had to grow, we had to experience, and we're doing that on the death penalty in the Catholic Church. Who knows where Pope Francis stands on the death penalty? Where does Pope Francis stand? Be vocal, yeah, what? Do we have a Pope who gets before the United Nations and before the Congress and says, "Hey, death penalty, do it in the name of Jesus"? No. He's calling for an end to the death. Now why? And what did Pope John Paul say about it when he came to St. Louis in 1999? He was the first pope to put the death penalty in with the other pro-life issues. And we're pro-life Catholics. We believe about the dignity of life from unborn children to the person with Alzheimer's who doesn't even know their name. The dignity of all life. But can we make an exception for murderers? Well, that was innocent life. But these people are guilty. They're crossing the line, and they should get the consequences. And so we're evolving and growing toward the gospel of Christ, which is the gospel of mercy and forgiveness. And you have heard it 7 9 for 9. But we grow, and that's the gift of being a community. We all hear. So let's hear your questions, and let's take the discussion now from where you want to go with it. Who has a question? You? Is there another? You're going to pass the mic around. So just raise your hand up. You go get your microphone, Pastor, and you just got a job. Okay, what's your question?
First, I'd like to thank you very much for your beautiful sharing of their information. And I can't wait. But I am very concerned with the violence we see now in humanity. But I'm also hopeful about a renaissance in love, a renaissance in a reevaluation of what we do. And it seems very barbaric to consider the death penalty, yet at the same time, I'm concerned and I work and I pray for these people who are having violent crimes and who brought them up, and if God was with them, and how they would have perceived things differently if given a different opportunity. And so I just wanted to find out your opinion about today's youth and their changing views to a more loving, communal environment, and how they can address the subversive and pervasive violence that they are being exposed to on a day-to-day world.
Yes. I'll give a short take on this, and then we're open to anybody to share this, because we have wisdom in the community. First thing you got to know about people on death row. There are over 3,000 on death row now, 1,000 have been executed. over 90% of them were abused as children. So the violence pumped into them. They pumped out that violence on someone innocent. And when I say that, that's not an excuse or condoning what they did. But when you witness violence and see violence and experience violence and abuse, you tend to be violent and abusive yourself. So on that front, we need a lot of healing. And we need to be able to, that renaissance of love we're talking about, if you just go on the web and just see the different groups that are just sprouting up among us, the people, to try to promote peace, to try to promote conflict resolution, of ways of settling things without violence and doing it. We need that all over this country. And we don't wait for somebody to go start a big program. Each of us is capable in our groups, in our homes, and where we are, of learning this and sharing with each other. We have a built-in system that leads to violence because we still have 42 million people in this country that live in poverty without opportunity. I learned when I was at St. Thomas, kids would come in to get their GED, they had been in the public schools. I had the benefit, like you have, going to a really good school. And these kids would come in, like I remember this kid was a junior, and he had 1 more year to go. And I said, well, look, we'll give you, let's see what your reading level is, see what your math level is. You only have 1 more year to go. The GED is not that hard. You'll be able to whip this thing out. And he couldn't read third grade reading, and he was a junior in public school. And it made me feel such shame, because I was always involved in the Catholic school system. And I knew the public school kids were struggling, but I had no idea how much. And so we have to, in our communities, in those, I'm hoping that you have better schools in New Hampshire, but schools make a difference. Jobs make a difference. Raising the minimum wage for people makes a difference. Because if you live in poverty and you're going to go work at a McDonald's because you can't read, and you know you're going to get this pitiful paycheck, and you're never going to go anywhere, and that makes you want to step outside the law and do drugs because you get good money for drugs. Sister Mary Lou Special has run this alternative program for kids involved in drugs and shootings. We have killings like you can imagine in New Orleans, and it's 90% young black people killing other young black people. And by the way, that's where we see race, is the race of the victim. When white people kill, the death penalty is sought. When people of color kill, not applicable race. And Mary Lou was talking to this kid and saying, really, look, we're teaching you the restaurant business, you can get a job. And he goes, this is Mary Lou. He said, man, I was making $800 a week with the drugs. Where am I going to make in this job? She goes, well now, really, you're not going to be paid as much, but you're going to be alive. Really? You got to go for it. And you can just see, and they get sucked into these currents. And everybody's got guns. And then you got drugs. Then you got mamas. Every time there's a shooting in St. Thomas when I was there, where's my child? Because they can't afford to live in another place in the city. They can't afford the rent. Real estate gets in there. Where are we going to live with our family? We can't move. All these things come into play. So start with your community here, and where are the needs? And what can we do? Even if you do one small thing, I don't think you got to change the whole world in one school. That's a huge problem. And the violence we hear in the rhetoric and political campaigns that we see going on in our country. I'm going to punch you in the face. Violence in language. Even the people running for president. We need some merciful help. But anyway, so let's hear from somebody else. Question? Comment? In the back, just speak up. You can melt it out.
Hi. Questions? I know that as far as like church teaching, other like politics meeting,
When you do me, mine.
Hello. So I was saying, as far as like Catholic official teaching and death penalty, I know that there's other policies humanity weekend catechism where it says that the death penalty is okay in like scenarios where it's absolutely necessary for the safety of the public good, but besides that, those situations are almost non-existent. So I just
Now, you know who you quoted when you said it?
that was Paul VI.
No, it's Pope John Paul in the Gospel of John. He wrote those very words. Come on, all right, trust you now.
So I was just wondering, do you think the church will ever like explicitly come out with a statement saying that no, this is definitely wrong, except in cases where we can't protect it before? Or do you think we'll keep this like vague definition of, it is?
That's interesting what you're saying. And yes, we are changing. See, Pope John Paul pushed it further than it had ever been before. This is traditional teaching of the church, almost. That the state has a right to take life to defend society. And then you had Pope John Paul in the Gospel of Life saying, if you have a way to defend society to prisoners, you don't need to imitate the killing. You don't need to do the killing. But he did say that in there, that in cases of absolute necessity, although the death penalty should be rare, not non-existent, I was just talking to Lady Ned on the way in about it. But then it got moved further. Because now we have the Pope Francis clear before the Congress, before all, no to the death penalty. And then, so there are no exceptions. Because we've grown past that. We always are going to be growing on moral issues. We always are going to be growing. And so we've reached the point now, especially at this point. But you know what it comes down to? No matter how many popes say things, or bishops say things, and we've got to make the journey in our own heart and sorrow ourselves, because this is a tough issue. And most of us feel these two kinds of feelings at the same time. If somebody killed my loved one, I know I want to kill them with my bare hands. Welcome to the human race, because that's the starting point of all of us. But like Lloyd, that doesn't have to be where we end up. And if you educate yourself on it and just see how it actually is carried out, and then you begin to have more and more reasons to bolster that feeling for life you have, the dignity of all life, even those among us who have done what they're right. Thank you. Excellent question. Somebody else.
See something about the situation of
Deacon Ed wants me to just say that where's that hand and I'm not going to lose you. Okay, I'll come back to you. I wrote the book, it came out in '93, and at the height, the 90s were the height, we had the most executions ever got, and that cat supported the death penalty. 78% of the American public supported the death penalty, and get this, 80% of Catholics supported the death penalty. We were above, but the rest of the Americans. But there's been a lot of change, a big shift, and it has to do with the dignity of life. So in '93, the book came out in the hardback, '94 it came out in paperback, and Susan Sarandon read it. Susan Sarandon called me. She knew we needed another kind of movie that would take people much more deeply into the issue on both sides. What's the suffering of the state? What does it mean for the state to execute people? And she pestered Tim Robbins for 9 months till he broke down and read the book. And by the end of '95, we had a film called Dead Man Walking. And it got 4 Academy Award nominations. And we had the wide showing of it across the United States in '96. And on the Feast of the Annunciation, March 25th, and I was at the Academy Awards. I never even looked at the Academy Awards. But Sister Margaret Worship, we both did the Academy Awards. And there's Whoopi Goldberg, she was MC that year. And she's a hoot. And she was keeping things moving, I can tell you that. Because Bruce Springsteen sang the title song on the album, Dead Man Walking, and Whoopi was introduced and said, Bruce, First, you did the top joke series about the people who don't have jobs, and then you get about your city, my city in ruins. Now, look, she got a song about a man on this road. She got to lighten up. And Susan received the Academy Award for her portrayal of me and that man walking. And it just put the movie out all across the world. There were 1.3 billion people watching it. And they heard it 4 times about that movie. And I was in Japan like 6 weeks later, and the taxi cab driver goes, "That man, you keep that, I'm walking." And they bow all the time when they talk to you in Japan, even on the telephone. And just like that. Now that's God's work. I just get on the car, put it out there, and then take, because we're meant for life. Meant for. The jurors have to make those terrible decisions to kill a fellow human being. They don't want to do that. They're made for life. So that's in our hearts. And we want to nurture that little seed in that soil and make it grow. Wait, I promise maybe.
I was just wondering if something here to all of our hearts is the Boston Marathon situation in New York, the Twin Towers and the Bay. Could you say that those people are these people and so many people murdered? I just couldn't find it.
Sure. So, the Boston Marathon, all of that beautiful day, people running, bombs going, and actors, and pressure cookers, and killing some people, destroying people's legs and arms and lives, 10 million a day, 168 people killed in America. Some from children, if you ever go to the memorial is empty chairs. There's no life sleeping, and the place the little children have good little chairs, as far as the front of the board. And then you just saw that into the terrorism thing, and 9/11, and 3,000 people who died. Look at all the Bible. And you used words of these are the evils or the evil people. Did you know that at time, you can never call a person evil. The act is evil. The act is unspeakably evil. But we can never attribute evil to the human person. And it's probably been one of the questions I've been asked by the media and all these media and things I've done. Common system. Any of these different things. Some of these people are evil. It's just never evil people. You must know. Sometimes is evil. And I finally found a way to answer the question. And I said, you're right, I did. I met an evil person. And when he was born, he was an evil baby. I mean, his parents had on his beard, evil. And then he became an evil toddler. And then he was an evil teenager. And then he was an evil adult. Evil is bad things that happen that we do to each other. And there was evil, but we cannot do it to a person. And every person has a story. When you look into the story of Timothy McVeigh, what happened to him? And his father was one told the story. Bud Welch, this is in my second book, I talk about Bud Welch. He's the hero of the second book, just like Lloyd and Roy is in this one. His daughter Julie was killed in Oklahoma City. And he was in his Texaco station, and the blast was so huge. Knocked the windows out. It reminded me of Hiroshima a little bit, but it wasn't big. We killed 250,000 people in one morning. And then in Nagasaki, we killed 200,000 people more by dropping a bomb. And look at that. But we legalized it. So you say, oh, that's too long. So that's different. And you start looking into this. And so Bud Welch was in his Texaco station. Somebody came in and said, Bud, that explosion has a bar building. Isn't that where Julie works? And that was his daughter. She'd gone to Warren Tech. She knew 300. And she was in the building in the morning where she had just walked over from where the rest of the social workers were to go help someone. She was going to translate from Spanish to English, someone who was trying to get a social security straight. And her fellow worker said if she just stayed here 5 minutes more, she wouldn't have been in the part of the building. The second day after the fireman brings out the body of Julie and Bud Hodges' journey begins. And he said there would be a morning when his feet would hit the floor and all he could think was, forget that day. I lost my beautiful daughter. And he would go every time he around and typically when there was a rain, and he said, thank God they put a little vest on him because I'm him. I've been with him and I shot him and killed him in a blink of an eye because he killed that precious children. And then 2 months down the road, Grace comes to him through the knob of the radio in the car. And he goes to touch the knob and remembers being in the car with Julie. And the radio was on and the news was on and they were talking about another persecution in Texas. And she looked at her father and said, Dad, that's just about legalized vengeance. He kills. Somebody kills, and then Texas kills them. And he remembers then Julie had started an Amnesty International group in our high school. And the crucial thing for him then was, will I honor Julie by asking for the death of the man who killed her? And there's his journey. And he gives talks just like Minnie Cushing travels and gives talks to help people reflect on this. There's nothing. It's a great testimony to persuasiveness. Somebody's been in the fire already, lost his father, and yet chooses to be against state government. I mean, I can tell you stories, but I'm not sorry. He has, or like the victim standing saying, and they are the most eloquent witnesses to us of the faith being lived in people, despite the evil, standing for something good and not choosing to give government that kind of power to decide. Now, you can set up your little way of doing this, but there's some citizens you can decide to kill. Don't choose the ones who are most evil. We have to be careful. So those are some aspects of that question. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. One reliable.
Stand up and look at those people.
One of the 12 reliable votes to sustain the death penalty in the state is State Senator Lou D'Alessandro. He's a Catholic. He's a moderate liberal. He's a Democrat. He ought to be approachable, yet he reliably votes to support the death penalty. What can we tell Lou? What can we tell Lou D'Alessandro that will finally persuade him? His church is changing. The population is changing. What can we say to him?
Now, what do you think? Anybody who's in politics, when they're doing something like that, what do you think is making him vote that way? Because it's really important to understand what's at play in a person if we're going to try to persuade him. What do you guess it is? What do you guess is the main reason?
I honestly don't know. I've spoken to him and I've never gotten a clear impression.
No,
Is he afraid of losing votes with his constituents, perhaps?
do you think they're going to do? Do you know that it's been, y'all know what the third rail is? You know, when you're training, the third rail is what produces the electricity. And many politicians think the death penalty is the third rail of politics. If they come out against the death penalty, they're going to lose constituents. That's huge. I mean, you don't even hear people in the presidential campaign talk about, and I'm against the death penalty. Even though we have every indication among someone that they are, but they don't dare say that out loud. Because the death penalty has been political currency that I'm tough on crime, and if you come out against the death penalty, you're weak. And I'm tough, and you're weak. And so vote for me, I'm tough. It's a huge thing in politics. Huge. So, how do you persuade those people? Yeah, what I know. And some people are going to be ultimately unpersuadable because their politics is finding what's most important to them. And they say what they think needs to be heard so they can get elected again. But I've also known human beings in the political office because they had people they respected who went and really talked to them. That grace and great mentor. And they can make a change out of principle and not just playing the field. So it's a long journey. I don't make any predictions about this person. This person may just stick that way. But conversations, just honest conversations as a Catholic, and especially if we're willing to share our own journey. I believed in the death penalty. Well, yeah, that's all we learned coming up in school. Do you know that where I went to school, just a few blocks away was the Baptist jail, where we had a portable electric chair in Louisiana, zapping people running down the street from me, and I didn't even know what was going on because I was uninvolved. Just didn't know that. And so didn't do anything. I just accepted the death penalty. Now I know a lot more. When we wake up, we learn stuff, then we can begin to act. Never underestimate an honest conversation. I want to say to the young people sitting in here, politicians love to be loved by young people. So suppose this person starts getting letters from young people. I'm just saying, we're just talking to them honestly. And they just say, I'm ready for other things. I just want to ask you. Can you stand up at night as a Catholic? I'm trying to stand up at night. Young people writing letters to politicians, it makes a big difference. Don't be afraid to use your voice because you're young. Your voice doesn't matter. Your voice matters. And you know what? When we begin to act, it's a very freeing thing. You know what the tough part is? Maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. Or maybe if I get my plan because I should do this, and this. Or then maybe I should do that. And we get paralyzed when we don't act. The simplest the action, the minute we begin to do it, life flows through us. So act something. Don't just stay in that middle position and it's all working in your head and you're not doing anything. Right? You got to go on the journey. You got to educate yourself. You got to get in touch with the parts of your heart that want to kill people, and I'm glad that the government does it. And then the other part of the heart that knows the gospel of Jesus and your own cause of life. And when Pope Francis is calling always to issue mercy. What does that mean? Mercy. What does it mean to be mercy? Blessed are the mercy, and they shall receive mercy. What does it mean? Is it pity? Or hold them? I'm going to have mercy on me. Is that what it means? It's mercy. Compassion. I'm going to be back in those books. I'm glad to sign for you to the counseling. Y'all still have counseling in New Hampshire. And I would love talking to you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks, Sister Helen, for being with us tonight.
They don't want me to come to the house. Oh, sister, so why don't you come in to visit? Come and pray together. They're going to hate me. And I stayed away. Because I thought, what if they say to me, Sister Helen, you care about us? You care about boy, David? You care about the Reverend daughter? Well, we want to see him executed. Can you be with us in that? Do you want to see justice for our dead child? What would I say? Maybe I just bring more pain. And I say, it was an act of kindness. Upon reflection of the whole thing. I met them. At the worst possible time you could meet a victim's family in Louisiana. It was a week before Pat's execution. And it was a part board hearing. And you signed a book when you go in for a part board hearing. Which side you on? They got the life side, and they got the death side of the book. Only 3 of us were signed on to ask the part board to let Patrick Sonnier live. Everybody else in the room, all the relatives, all the friends of the victims' families were there because they had been told, the victims' families had been told, This is the last legal hoop you gotta jump through to get your justice. Don't you let those bleeding heart girls come in there and talk to those 5 government appointees entitled to cry you your justice. And that's my victim's story. Was that happy? And why was I there? To ask the pardon would not excuse me. And they were all there to see me out. And we were walking outside the building while the cardboard was loading, and I rounded the corner, and I ran right into the parents. David's parents were Roy and Eula Long, an older couple. They couldn't have other children. It was their only son. They had a daughter, but they lost him, and they couldn't have another child. And Loretta's parents, Godfrey and Bonnie Book, and they were walking up first, and we ran into each other. They were furious. I can't believe, is it just so many books and none do it come to the part over here? And she's coming trying not to get the killer executed. Well, where was she when our daughter? Didn't have anybody to counsel her, to help her in her last moments before she was ripped into eternity. And they saw me and they averted their gaze like that and just walked by me in silence, and the boy's parents were right behind them, and I expected the same thing. And surprise by grace. Have you noticed it? Have you been in a way of jumping out of the box that we can never really predict absolutely how people don't respond, that people respond differently because we're made individually? And David's parents, Lord, you look along and walk right up to me. And Lord, God sets us down. Oh, David's father, this is his mom, sister. All this time he did this until us two boys, and you didn't want to come to see us. You can't believe the pressure we're going under with this death penalty. I didn't know what it meant. What do you mean pressure? Pressure? What kind of pressure? And he said, sister, I'm sure those brothers should be their best side. They killed our son for blood. And I almost lost my wife here. I have to take her to the grave every day. She can't make it through her day. And then he was the grace, because I'd done it all along. He said, sister, I pray for this little child. Come pray with her. And that was an invitation I could not refuse. Good Catholic man, keeping vigil before the Blessed Sacrament, St. Martin to his church in our little Cajun town of St. Martin. I said, I'll be there, Mr. Paul. What time do you pray? He said, 4 to 5 in the morning. I said, I'll be there. And it meant going back to his night before, it meant driving across the chapel lines, spillways, big swamp, and getting there for 4, kneeling down by a man, and we said the rosary together. And one of the gifts of being Catholic is we're given always to pray. We have an hour of adoration, just quiet, to be able to see what God is saying to us in our hearts. To say the rosary, the Eucharist that gathers us around the central mystery that Jesus, who loved us to the point of death, is calling to us to love each other generously and to help His kingdom come in the world, to make it real in our history, in our time. And I knelt alongside a man, and it was Friday, and so the mysteries of the Rosary and the life of Christ we remember on Friday, which is the day that Jesus was set to die, is the sorrowful mystery. And so we pray to Him, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. The sorrowful mysteries of the Rosary, the agony in the Lord. And I'm praying alongside a man who was praying through the agony of his son on the last night he was alive before he was killed. And as he prays, as Lord upon prays, I got my first glimpse into his soul. My first clue was that even though I know it all along, he invited me to you come pray with him. Already that's grace. Then when he was saying the intentions for rosary before he actually said the rosary, and he was praying for the safety of teenagers, and he was praying for the poor families, praying for the Lord's wife, praying for Vicky's daughter, and praying for the books who had sons who had problems with drugs. Then he had a prayer for Mrs. Son. He said a prayer for Patton and Sully's mom, who lived in the hotel. And he knew what she was going through. That she'd come to the grocery store and people would say loud enough for her to hear, there she is, that white trash woman. What's she doing in here? Her son's killed the woman and the wall kids. And that people were cutting up dead animals and throwing them on the front porch. And kids were driving around her little house going, mother of the murderer, mother of the murderers. And he says a prayer for her. And I'm going to hold him up to you as the hero of Helen walking of the story. I'm just a storyteller, and I made that bad mistake of not reaching out to the Becky's family. But he reached out to me, and he took me into his journey. When he said, sister, when I said to you, you don't know the pressure of the Lord? He said, you don't know anything about pressure? Everybody was saying, you know it. His son was killed, you gotta be for the death. Or you look like you didn't like the boy. Everybody was saying that to me, sister. And sometimes you and I go to mass in different parishes to see if we can hear some priest from the pulpit talking about the gospel of Jesus and how Jesus said, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, pray for those who persecute you. Love your enemies. We couldn't hear it anywhere. Everywhere it was, you lost your child, so you got me for the death penalty. Sister, you are in there for the seat. And then he took me with him into this journey of the Lord, of grace. Because he said, with everybody saying that to me, Lord, you got me for the death penalty, he said, hold in there. I would take these vivid pictures, imagining that Patson was in an electric chair and his brother, and I would get to pull the switch. And in my mind, I would pull that switch slowly because I wanted them to feel pain because they had caused us suffering. And then he said, I began to notice what was happening in me. Because I've always been a kind person. I'm not that. And I'm good with my hands. I can fix things. He said, if you come to my house, you're going to see lawnmowers, hands, Lord, you can fix this. Cars, toasters, will you fix this? And I love to help you. And I was losing it. I was angry all the time. I'm staring at my life. And I was losing my joy. And then he did his hand like this, and he said, then I said, they killed our son, but I'm not going to let them kill him. And he said, Jesus, you got help. And he began to set his face to go down the road that Jesus had taught to forgive. He said, Sister, most people think forgiveness is weak. You forgive? What do you mean you forgive? You condone what they did, like forgive and forget? And he said, that's not the way I experienced it. He said, and he taught me, he was the first one to teach me that maybe what forgiveness is, it's not first and foremost to lift the burden of the weight of the one who did the terrible crime, but it was to save somebody. That love in him would not be overcome by hatred, so that then he would become hateful too. One victim's family I know, this man said, boy, I wanted to see a person die who killed my loved one, and it's like I was drinking poison and I hope he died. Because of anger and hatred inside him, all in all the spiritual traditions, forgiveness and mercy. This is the year of mercy. What's it mean? Mercy, first of all, for ourselves. That with God's grace, we're not overcome by hatred. of those that hurt us or hurt people we love. And please God, we don't have to deal with things like people being murdered. But we all know hurt. We all know when people gossip on our backs and they do mean things to us. Or the bullying that can happen on Facebook. We know that because it's part of the human experience. But what about our responsibility? You got Randy Cushing sitting in here who's been working in New Hampshire to end the death penalty. His father was killed in cold blood. Randy comes into his father's house and there's his father in the pool with his own gun. And he has a journey. He has a journey to tell you about. And how is it that he can have his father killed, and yet he's working here in the state of New Hampshire to get the government killing off the books and to end killing? Much less to do in the name of victims. Like, oh, this is the way we're going to honor the victims' family. There are just so many problems with that. Come to be victims' families waiting for years for this so-called justice. And look at it and think about what it is. Now you wait, we're going to get this thing going here in New Hampshire. We have a killing license 1939. Oh, we're going to do this one. And then we're going to call you in when it's time for the execution, and you're going to have a privileged seat, and you're going to get a watch as we kill one who killed your loved one, and you watch that, and that's going to heal you. Or sometimes they use the word, that's going to give you closure. And that is killing in the name of the state and killing in our name, because you can't have the death penalty in New Hampshire without your name being on the Guertin. Because we're all responsible. Now we didn't think, we now say, oh, well, I don't get involved with those politics. I used to say that. I'm spiritual. I'm love. And then Maria Castanillo had none of comfort. She cut me off that path and she was waiting for me. She said, oh, we may say, oh, well, I'm not politically involved. But if we're not doing one thing to change things, then that means we support the status quo. There's no way to be neutral in a democratic society. If we're not standing up for something or to change it, then it's done in our name. We can't say, oh, well, I'm not responsible. Because there's no way to be neutral. So through Lord and God, then I began to go to these murder victim support groups. Because I wanted to understand, what can I do to help? And there's all kinds of help we need to give to victims of violence. Marriages break up when a child's killed. Some people are so poor they don't have the money for funeral expenses. There's counseling that they need. Sometimes the siblings drop through the cracks because everybody's so concerned about the daughter or the son that got killed that kids get lost in the shuffle. They forgot all about me. It was always about my sister's death, and they forgot my birthday. They need help and support. They need us reaching out to them. What if, when you look at the image of the cross, and there are two arms, and we're in the middle, we're remembering the cross, two arms. And Christ in the middle, us in the middle. And what if the invitation of the gospel is, can we reach out to the perpetrators on one arm of the cross? Prison ministry, reaching out to people in prison. And on the other arm of the cross, reaching out to victims of violence, accompanying them, being named to them, not leaving them alone. You know what most of them, I found out, would say, sister, everybody leaves us alone because they don't know what to say. And to reach out. Like if you know something that happened in a family, just to write a note, say a prayer for you, to reach out in some way. That's what we're called to do as neighbors. And then I began to travel into the journey, into the hearts along the victims' families, as much as I can, because I've never been a victim. Nobody killed my mother or my sister or my nephews. And sometimes it's like you come to the life of a policeman who risked their lives for us, and a policeman was killed, or someone who's a to serve in the community. It's so hard because we know they're risking their life. But I want to just point out to you the difficulty when you're doing the death penalty in a state. You have to specify. Well, if you're a policeman and you're killed while you're on duty or as a policeman, you get the death penalty. But not if you're a fireman. Not if you're a public health nurse. Not if you're a teacher, but a policeman. And so can you picture the hearings where the wife of the fireman who was shot when he was going up a ladder to save somebody from a burning building and some sniper killed him? And their wife is before that legislative committee saying, you mean to tell me if my husband had been a policeman, he would be worth the death penalty, but because he's a fireman, he's not? Who's worthy of death and who's not? Or this family, the mother and father who talk about their son who was killed. Well, we have to legislate, well, death penalty for a child. Well, we have to define it. A child is 12 and younger. And they said, our son Peter was 14 years old. Are you saying Peter got deserved to get the death penalty for his killing because he happened to be 14 and not 12? How can we take on this debt and legislate? Who has the power to do that? Legislators supposed to go after the worst of the worst. Who knows what that means? And so I invite you to reflect. I invite you to read that book. When you read the book, what's good about a book is you don't have to read the book in the quiet, it's like praying. You go to the places and you think about it. And here we are together in the community. That's the precious gift of Christian community. We can reflect on these things together. We get all around us. And what about this? And what about that? And we can sort through to come to wisdom. And come to what Christ asks us to do. The deepest, most honest question in our souls. Who will I call to be? And then the great gift of community too is to come into action. And I'm going to ask Randy Cushing to come up here with John. These are people who work in New Hampshire day in and day out to awaken the people so that you can help your legislators the next time they come to a vote about whether or not New Hampshire is going to keep the death penalty or not, that you can tilt it toward life for your state. So Randy Cushing, this is the man I talked about whose father was killed. And John, you want to come stand with him and look pretty? Or whatever you want to do? And they can invite you now to become part of this New Hampshire coalition. Randy Cushing, good friend of mine.
Sister Helen is really speaking just invitation. One of the things that I remember and I'm most grateful for about Helen is that while I had my own experience of having my father shot to death in front of my mother in subsequently, I also had a brother-in-law who was murdered. But Helen helped me look at the other side of the equation, I guess. And I had the interesting experience of being in Texas with Helen and going to visit Death Row in Texas. And I have to tell you that in a way that made me understand how messed up this broken death penalty system is. Because as I met human beings who are held in cages awaiting to be executed, I still have this memory of the Senate of what death row was like. And I remember talking to someone who was a pretty pathetic person who done a heinous crime. But what struck me after the conversation a week later is to watch the clock back at my home in Hampton and watch it as the clock in my kitchen approached 6 o'clock. And I realized that as I was sitting in my kitchen, the man that I had met 10 days earlier who was alive and well was being put to death in a ritual killing that was somehow designed to avenge whatever he did, but didn't bring anybody back. What it did was create just another grieving family And I knew that when shortly thereafter, I met his niece and understood how his execution had impacted that family, just as that man's killing had impacted the family. So that's part of what Helen's grace is to me. Last week, we had the misfortune, last week, as Helen referenced, there was a bill to abolish the death penalty. It was sponsored by one of your senators here in Nashua, Senator Abar, co-sponsored by your other senator, Senator Lasky, had bipartisan support that would repeal the death penalty in New Hampshire. Unfortunately, it ended up being a 12-12 vote. They were not the votes to pass it, they were not the votes to defeat it. But in this instance, a tie goes to the execution. So that bill remains this table and remains on the table in the Senate, where for another 2 weeks, should one of the members of our Senate have maybe an epiphany, that's the word I would use, but to be able to reflect upon the totality of life and being legislator. One person changes his or her mind, that bill will be taken off the table and passed and sent over to the House, where I'm pretty confident there'll be votes to enact that and to signal once and for all that New Hampshire will be without the death penalty. So I would suggest people, if they have the opportunity, to kind of weigh in on some of your senators and suggest that they take the bill off the table and pass it. On the flip side, there's also something that's happening this week, this coming week, that will take place on Thursday. There's just as a bill in the Senate to abolish the death penalty. In the House, there's a bill to expand it, to create what would be the most expansive death penalty in the country, where anyone who takes anyone's life would be eligible for capital punishment. We had a heated, very painful discussion in the House about that. In the end, the House committee voted to recommend that that bill not pass by 11-4 vote. On Thursday, the whole House is going to take it up. And it's really important that if you want to make sure that the last thing we want to do is expand that, we want to make sure to just contact the state legislators and to urge them to vote to determine if it's inexpedient to legislators how we kill bills. We put an end to that piece of legislation.